Welcome to the Expired Podcast by Macy Bookout and Natalie Gard. New episodes are released each and every Monday, and get early access to our episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel. We're also on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you download podcasts. This is the Expired Podcast.
Get on.
Yes, ma'am.
This is how we roll our podcast.
This is the way I live.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, so welcome to the Expired Podcast. Of course, this is a crazy case because it was the last hanging in Tennessee
By the
ever.
courts.
Ever. And I just feel like it wasn't that long ago.
It
Like,
really
It
wasn't.
wasn't that long ago.
But nothing was that long ago, if I really think about it.
Really, yeah. I feel like COVID and the pandemic, fried my brain, and I have
For
no
a
sense
time.
of time.
Yes.
I have no sense of time.
It's like a whole year disappeared.
It was like the past 3 years, I have no idea what I've done.
Yes. Or what year it was when you did that.
Yeah.
Like, pre-COVID, after COVID.
Yeah.
It's like,
What you did before, what you did after.
yes,
Yeah, it's
man, it's wild.
It's,
But
yeah.
this one, this week's case, I guess, I'll be honest, I'm not so sure I don't feel like I want to call it a case, because I feel like it's more of like a history story, kind of like a, what do they call them, like old wives' tales, but super interesting. Like, it's, since we put this on our case schedule, I have not stopped thinking about it.
I know.
It's kind of fascinating.
It's very fascinating. And the fact that just, this is the first time I feel like I'm rooting for the person who was convicted.
Yeah.
Like, really rooting.
Yes.
As much knowledge as we can get from a case from the 1800s.
Right. Part of me is just rooting for the person convicted because of everything that happened afterwards. I'm not so sure that he did what they think he did, but at the same time, partly just because even if he is guilty, he's something that's beyond just a normal human.
Yeah.
If we choose to believe all these things. But I think with that, we'll just get into it, because I'm going to keep looking into this for forever, I think.
I know.
I'm obsessed with it.
And the fact, you mentioned this, the fact that we literally started talking about.
Yeah, we had been sitting here for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Just talking about vacation, talking about kids and work, whatever. And literally the second we bring this up and mention his name and actually start discussing the case, the bottom falls out of the sky. It is pouring rain, thundering, lightning, which it literally happened the second after we mentioned his name.
And it's so weird because I was listening to the radio on the way here, and it was about the time they were like, this is when the thunderstorm threat stops.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, it's not going to rain. I mean, yeah.
Because it was 5 minutes away.
Yeah, it was 5 minutes away, and I was like, it's not going to rain. So I get here.
Hasn't rained.
Hadn't rained. We're still talking, whatever. And then all of a sudden, it looks so eerie outside.
Literally, the second we vocally mentioned his name.
Okay.
A whole storm came,
This
y'all.
is insane.
It's still storming.
And it's still going.
I guarantee you, if
when we stop,
yes, it will stop raining.
Yeah.
I believe in that stuff.
I do too.
Okay, so this case that we're talking about 1800s, okay, late 1800s. So Cal Logston, he was 22 years old. He was the last man hung by the court, so convicted of something, and the punishment was hanging, death by hang. This is in Jamestown, Tennessee, which is northeast Tennessee, kind of close to Knoxville area. So for him to be hung, there were 3 convictions. he was convicted of murdering 3 people. It also took 3 attempts to actually hang him to death.
Angel number 3.
So he was convicted of killing Granny Lucinda Galloway, her daughter Catherine, and one of her grandchildren, one of Catherine's sons.
Yeah. So, a little background about Cal. His mother and father separated when he was young. His father lived in Kentucky and his mom lived in Tennessee. And Cal ended up with his mom's dad, Mr. Brown. That's how all the stuff I've read, Mr. Brown. His name was Mr. Brown. He had 2 younger aunts living with him, so it would have been Mr. Brown's daughters, Eliza and Jane, and then Cal. So Cal pretty much grew up, by himself, by his, maternal grandfather. Mr. Brown, he was a widower, so his wife had passed away, and so he was just, a farmer living, taking care of his 2 daughters and his grandson. Mr. Brown was dating this woman named Catherine, who was much younger than him.
Yeah, I'm gonna pause you for, if y'all hear these noises, it is the thunder. And there's not enough soundproofing in the world to not hear it if you hear it. So that's what the noise is.
Yeah,
okay.
It's insane. So Mr. Brown is dating Catherine. Now Jane and Eliza, Mr. Brown's daughters, didn't like that he was dating this woman, Catherine. And so they were like, hey, Cal, could you walk us down to the Galloway's house so we can talk to Catherine?
And he was 19 at this time.
19. They're probably older, but I'm not for sure. So he agrees. He's like, yeah, I'll just walk you down there. Granny Lucinda Galloway, Catherine, and one of her 2 sons, William Galloway, were found dead the next day. The surviving son of Catherine would later testify that Cal, Eliza, and Jane were there for money. They said, where's the money? Whatever. And they were killed by a hatchet and a shovel, which I think is weird because 2 murder weapons, 3 accomplices, 3 people who did it.
Yeah.
Make of that as you will.
Yep.
After the murders, Cal is spooked and freaked out of what he just did / saw. And so he goes to his dad's house in Kentucky.
The guy, the surviving son, didn't he testify also to that even though the 3 were like, they came for money or whatever, that the 2 aunts or like the 2 girls were the main murderers, the ones who committed it, which is interesting. So on April 5th, 1872, which is roughly 3 years after the murders were committed, Cal Logston attended his own funeral because...
That is wild. I didn't know that happened.
Yeah, so back in the day, like if you were convicted and hung, you were able to like plan your own funeral and attend it. It was like a humane thing, I think, that they just provided for the person who's about to die, basically. But yeah, so he attended his own funeral and then proceeded to get ready to be executed. I do want to say, before we get into how it all went down, as he obviously is like, goes to his own funeral, it sounds crazy to say, he's able to like shake hands with his family members.
Like say goodbye.
Yes.
He's able to, pretty much give his like last statements to whoever he wants.
Yes, they did provide the opportunity, just like they do in today's world with the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
You are able to address anything that you feel like you need to address before you are executed.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, he says he does want to make one final statement, and it reads like this. I'm innocent, and to prove this, I will be hung 3 times, as the rope will break twice. The rope was then placed and tightened around his neck. The trapdoor was released, and Cal dropped straight to the ground before the rope broke instantly. The crowd hushed as a new rope was placed around Cal's neck. This time when the trapdoor released, the rope held for 30 seconds before breaking. A third time, a weak and groggy Cal Logston was led to the platform, and he weakly raised his hand to silence the crowd. He had one more thing to say. Cal warned the crowd that he was in fact innocent of this crime, and he also added, if I'm hung for a third time, you will know you have hanged an innocent man, and there will be 3 days and 3 nights of rain as never seen before in this county. Tomorrow will be the biggest flood that has ever been on the Obey River. Also, 100 years after my hanging, on the site of my burial, a multitude of poisonous snakes, I would have to say poisonous is not the right word, venomous, because I know my snakes. My burial, a multitude of venomous snakes will emerge. If I'm guilty, these things will not be. Cal was then hung for the 3rd time. After the trapdoor was released, Cal hung suspended for 27 minutes before finally meeting his death. So,
as soon as that happened,
yes,
as soon as the death happened, what do you know?
What do you know?
Started to fall.
Yep. So literally, after he was pronounced dead, the first drop of rain fell when he was pronounced dead. There was a flood. Animals and crops died from the flood, and people literally had to uproot, leave for higher ground. Literally what he said was going to happen happened.
People would even be like, that's Cal Logston.
Yes.
It was,
yeah, all the stories and stuff, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He continued that 100 years from now, snakes will appear on my grave, and you'll know I'm innocent. Literally 100 years later, at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, they did a study on an overpopulation of dangerous venomous snakes in Jamestown that had never been there before. The species had never been there before. It's wild.
They did a study on that because this is near York Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
This grave site is behind this elementary school, and they're like, we got to get a school, a study, a whatever up here because we can't have all these
kids at recess with all these snakes.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's literally right behind the elementary school.
The grave. 1972, 100 years.
Exactly 100 years after. It's wild.
Jaw on the floor.
Years after that, a rare plant that has never been spotted in Tennessee. Some people will say that red ferns don't exist. They are, in fact, not a species of plant. Obviously, most people, at least our age and older, have heard of the movie Where the Red Fern Grows. If you haven't watched it, you should, because it's a great movie. But years after the snakes, a rare plant that had never been spotted in Tennessee, or maybe possibly ever spotted anywhere, shows up, sprouts, right at the grave, at the tombstone of Cal Logston.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And we read that, these red ferns aren't normally seen. And if they are seen, the ancient myth, the wives' tale, if you will.
Yeah, from Native Americans.
Yes.
Have a theory on them.
That only angels can plant them.
Mm-hmm.
insane because that photo you showed me is just so
There is an
insane.
actual red fern.
And it's such a creepy
Right
grave because it's one of those old ones.
school.
Yes, and I think it's weird because his name was spelled wrong.
His name was spelled wrong, and back then, like, it says Cal Logston with a T, not a D,
Uh-huh.
and then it says hanged.
Hanged.
It puts the manner of death. They put the manner of death on
So wild.
on it.
That
Yeah.
is so wild.
I want to know if our listeners believe this
Kind of stuff.
story, this, one could say fact, one could say tale, like,
Mm-hmm.
because I do.
I do. That you always say, I don't believe in coincidences.
I
And
don't.
I'm
I
almost
don't.
like, holy moly.
Yep.
That angel number, 3 coincidences right after the other and with the huge spans of time.
And exactly when he said,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think he was innocent just because of that. I don't need any evidence. I don't need an investigation.
I agree with you that he was innocent too, because if these stories and these tales, wives' tales that we're sharing are in fact true, which, I mean, who would make this up and then know that there's going to be a flood, or know that there's going to be a venomous snake infestation, or then the red fern? Like, no one can say all those things would happen because of this.
Yeah.
Like, that you can't really, I guess you could make that up, but, like, can't really make that up.
Yeah.
And
it come true.
I feel like he was just so confident in himself and, like, with death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he was so
He's at
sure.
peace.
Yes. So sure of, all right, if this is the decision y'all want to make, that's fine. I get it. Like, he wasn't afraid to meet his creator or what he believed in. He was just like, all right, fine, but I'm telling you.
Wait and see.
Yep. I'm the wrong guy. I'm the wrong one. It wasn't me.
And back in the 1800s, it was very difficult for people to believe that a woman could
Commit murder.
Yes.
Yep. Especially of someone that is their elder and also a child.
Yeah.
Yes. To them, that, and likely so, very rare if it did happen. No, this whole thing just fascinates me.
98% of killers are men. Just saying. Just saying. And that's in today's world.
Yep.
Insane. Okay.
I can't believe he was convicted.
I know.
With the only surviving person testifying that he was not a part of the murder.
Yeah.
But
it was the 1872s.
Can't even imagine. Okay. We're actually gonna record something else after this.
Yeah, so we're gonna be in the same outfits for 2 weeks.
I know, man.
Because we're going on vacay.
Yeah, and from a TV perspective, that's a nightmare that we're wearing the same thing 2 weeks in a row. But it is what it is.
This is not.
I did think about telling you that we should bring in an extra shirt, but hey, guess what? The rest of this office space is TTM, so we couldn't go put any shirt on. But we will update you, because I swear after we are done discussing this and reset for the next case, this storm is going to stop. If it doesn't, we'll tell you, but we will let you know.
Or it may rain for 3 nights and 3 days.
Very well could.
We don't know.
I hope it doesn't.
I know.
I want to swim.
So make sure you're following us on YouTube so that you can get early access to the podcast every Monday.
And you can see our pretty faces.
And you can see our same outfits. Until next week, this is the Expired Podcast.
Bye.
Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get early access to our episodes every Monday. Thanks for listening to the Expired Podcast.